Hey guys, my name is Moon and welcome back for more Higurashi When They Cry Chapter 3 Tatarigoroshi. So last episode, Keiichi was preparing, I suppose, on the things he would do to Satoko's uncle, right? Getting a baseball bat, finding a place where to hide him, and then we also had a phone call with Mion, right? It was very nice and we learned some things about Satoshi as well. The day before he disappeared, right? That was pretty cool. So yes, let's load this up. Let us continue. Sunday. The fireworks I heard before noon were probably to announce the opening of the festival. And the weather certainly wasn't festival weather, it was cloudy. The television forecast was calling for possible downpour starting this evening and lasting until around midnight. But as long as it wasn't raining at the moment, the festival would go on. The festival had to open or it wouldn't begin. The Furuta Shrine grounds were probably decorated beautifully for the big performance that only happened once a year. Many paper lanterns were hung up, all in the auspicious colors of red and white. The sound of electric motors at the stalls, the voices of kids running around, their happy families watching them smiling. Today was the festival of Watanagashi. Was everyone already partaking in the festivities? What about Satoko? Had she forgotten her days of suffering just for a few moments while smiling that brilliant smile she hadn't in so long? This would probably be the longest day of my life. It would be a day I would remember vividly for as long as I lived. I told my parents I'd go to the festival this evening and lounge about during the early afternoon. We may have lived under the same roof, but they couldn't help being surprised by the deviation from how I usually spend my time. Glancing at my parents out of the corner of my eye, I went to the front door. I tied my shoes just a little tighter than normal, as if to express the firmness of my resolve in those knots. When I decided to murder Satoko's uncle, I was in such a state of excitement I almost went crazy. And when I was planning to act out the murder, which went directly against all the morals fostered in me thus far, I was in such a state of calm I almost thought I had lost my emotions. And then yesterday, when I learned Satoshi had made exactly the same phone call as me, I didn't know how to describe the muddled feelings I had then. And now entering today? Right now I lacked all emotions I'd possessed until now. To make a simple analogy, it was the kind of feeling you get when you get right after you wake up, when you're still half asleep and you don't feel anything very clearly. I had no anger towards that man for the violence he'd committed against Satoko, nor did I feel sadness or sympathize with her. I felt no discontent towards my friends who had just waited and watched, never reaching out to her with any help, and no nervousness or fear towards the day that had finally come. Yes, right now we could say I was in the best possible condition for carrying out a murder. Damn. When it came down to it, I probably need to let my violent emotions take control. But right until that moment, I would be like an insect. I would slowly, surely, and silently move towards my one objective, and then, when I had my prey, I'd attack like a bullet. There was no emotion in that. Just a creeping mindset insects possessed. That sort of sneaking feeling was just the best. I would kill Satoko's uncle like he was a worm. I had to laugh a little at thinking that way, thinking like an insect. Thug. I tightened my laces one more time and walked out the door. I brought the shovel out of the front storeroom. I would need it to dig the man's grave. The shovel was convenient, one made for camping. If I twisted it like so and split into three, I could easily hide it in my bag. I twisted the shovel and dismantled it. And even though I had done it countless times before, I had trouble for some reason. Like, I was suddenly clumsy now because you're very nervous, sir. That's why. I know why. It wasn't because I was nervous. Okay? My weak-willed self deep within me was hesitant. I knew that the act of dismantling the shovel was the first step I'd take to becoming a murderer. The last twist was conspicuously difficult, but I finally submitted before the strength of my determination. The area around Satiko's house was outside my circle of activity. But even just riding my bike in the middle of the day like this might seem suspicious to an observant person. I definitely want to avoid meeting and talking to someone I knew. With that in mind, I chose the route to my destinations carefully. I didn't mind going the long way around. With how long this day would be, I could never be too careful after all. Still, I was fortunate enough to not run across anybody on my way to the planned site of crime. I wasn't superstitious at this point, but it was a good omen. The place I would dig the hole was in this grove a little further into the woods. I was worried I might not make it to the same place as before, since there were no signs to guide me, but I arrived there smoothly as expected. I took another look around, not even a hint of human presence. The air was a little damp, but it was comfortable in the cool shade of trees. I took the disassembled shovel out of my bag and began skillfully putting it together. And then I stuck the tip of the shovel into a soft-looking patch of ground and pushed it with my foot. Then the shovel would split into the earth if I put some strength into that foot. The act of doing so seemed awfully like the point of no return. I was just digging a hole with a shovel, but it made me gulp hard. Calm down, Keiichi my bara. Let's do a countdown. Get it done on the count of 3, okay? Alright. 1, 2. I couldn't do it on a countdown, despite it just being sticking the shovel into the ground, and I had to count down 5 or 6 times. Damn it. I'm just digging a hole. This is pathetic. As I thought that, I put strength into my heel like I was stepping on something unpleasant, and split came the sharp noise. It was only soft at the beginning. Roots and stones got in my way, informing me just how hard it was to dig a hole big enough for a person. No decent person would come or would ever come here anyway. Maybe it would be enough to cover him up with some dirt. Every time a naive thought like that crept into my mind, I bit down on it with my teeth and dug even deeper. Or harder. I've dug enough now. I could hide him like this. Every time I thought that, I would go down into the hole, grow disappointed at how shallow it was, and return to digging. The thin layer of sweat on my brow eventually formed into drops and fell to the ground. My back was in even worse shape. My damp shirt adhered to my skin and it felt so disgusting. The things I couldn't stand the most were the mosquitoes. Maybe they were attracted to the scent of my sweat. The white and black striped mosquitoes would cling to me whenever I let my guard down. It was hot. It was disgusting. It was sticky. Or I was sticky. I was itchy. All those uncomfortable feelings surged through me in waves. I hadn't yelled at anyone. It was me talking to myself, telling myself something. Why was I feeling this way and digging a hole all the way out of here? What benefit would digging this hole give me? What a harm would there be in not digging this hole at all? Wait, in the first place, who ordered me to dig? When I thought it over, maybe ever since grade school, or even before that, my whole life had only been me doing what other people told me to do. I didn't mean it. It was somehow constrained, living a life just based on the commands of others. And I didn't mean I was too lazy to try and find my own road in life. Metaphorically speaking, yes, it was like a road. Okay. I'd never been particularly physically fit. I didn't even hit puberty very early, and if all my classmates and I got in a line, I'd usually be on the shorter end. My scores in a jump rope competitions and marathons were the very picture of average. And it wasn't like the captains of the dodgeball teams would have a passionate rock paper scissors contest to see which would get me. During those kindergarten and grade school years, it felt like someone was only worth how fast they grew and how fit they were. Looking back on it now, it was really uncomfortable for me. The thing that turned all that around was just a few words from my mom.
Keiichi? あなた塾に入る気はない？学校の勉強がわかるようになって楽しくなるわよ。
The very first test I took at cram school was kind of like a game. It was a lot of fun. It wasn't like the test with the same exact problem. Dozens of times in a row, every question had a picture in it, almost like one of those puzzle books that came with manga magazines. If my studies at school had been like this, it would have been way more fun. Several days later, I went to cram school again with my mom and the enrollment paperwork. Mom and the person at the cram school had a really long heated discussion, so I accidentally dozed off and missed most of what they said, but I clearly remember one point. Mom had made a loud groan, surprised at something.
61って平均点が61点ですか？
いえ、違いますよ、お母さん。全国展開する当塾での平均偏差値が61です。簡易式の知能検査でも非凡な数字が出ています。まず申し上げて、前原圭一君は大変に頭がいい。
So Keiichi is really smart.
圭一が？でも学校では大した成績じゃありませんし、通信簿も2、3、4が適当に並ぶ平均的なもので、何かの間違いではありませんか？
いくつかの知能テストとも重ねましたが、その結果興味深いことが分かりました。前原君は意味を持たない問題に非常に弱いのです。無味乾燥で自身の生活に結びつかない内容の問題に興味が持てないのです。
2+3は分からなくても、リンゴが2個あって3個増やしたら何個にという形なら理解できるということですか？
So he's really bright, but if like the question is like boring, like yeah, 2 plus 3, that's very, very boring, right? But you have this one, 2 apples and got 3 more, how many would you have? He would know that.
その通りです。例えば、正六面体の展開図を書けと言われて混乱する圭一君も、サイコロを切り開いたらどんな形になる
?Okay.
というふうに聞けば、見事に答えられるのです。
Then the person from the cram school showed her a page from one of the exams I took. It was a paper with questions about construction. Construction questions were unusual, so they were really cool, weren't they?
正二十面体の展開図を書けという問題です。この問題を二十面体のサイコロを作るにはどんな風に厚紙を切ればいいと聞き直したら、圭一君はさも簡単そうにこれを書いてみせました。これは平凡なことではありません。
圭一、あなたどこかの本の雑誌の付録か何かで二十面体のサイコロを作ったことがあったの？
Dice only went from 1 to 6. I never even considered before this test that there were dice with more than 6 sides. So it was fun to imagine what kind of shape a die that went up to 20 would have. If I had a die like that, I could win at snakes and ladders against anyone. So I immediately wanted to make it. Finally, I entered cram school. There were only 4 students in the class they put me in, which was called Select. I guess it is the bright students, right? The smart ones. It was the highest class, and some of my classmates were in lower classes. Okay. And when I remembered how much better they had done at things like dodgeball and the 50-meter sprint, I felt happiness well up within me for the first time. Even if I wasn't as good as them physically, I triumphed over them in other ways. It was fun at first. The more I did, the more I was praised. My teacher at school suddenly started pampering me and felt good. My parents were satisfied too, and I enjoyed seeing them satisfied. The more I listened to my parents' commands, the more fun things got. That did happen, didn't it? I grinned wryly in self-deprecation because, well, my studious lifestyle didn't end up lasting very long. It was only at the beginning I enjoyed learning more and more. I gradually got along less with my friends. My classes were behind what I was learning in cram school, and I eventually stopped respecting the teachers, giving that they could put me to sleep with their lectures. And well, I was a disagreeable sort who bragged a lot about how much I knew. And the ways of the world wouldn't let me remain in that state of ecstasy forever. I would do as I was told, and I'd go above and beyond their expectations, and then they praised me. I was happy for that, and the cycle repeated itself like the wheels on a bike. I thought moving forward like that was how life worked, like a bicycle. When I moved to Hinamizawa, I realized just how inadequate it was. Some things happened and we started saying how moving and getting a change in atmosphere would be nice. And then my father, he had a place that he liked that he had gone to a few times to draw the nature. He started saying that he wanted to bring his atelier there. With me in a blank amazement, they decided to move into Hinamizawa. And after that, I met them, didn't I? The first day after transferring here, I went to the classroom with the teacher. I thought it would seem pitiful for her to bring me in there, so I placed my hand on the door before she could and slammed it open and set foot into the room. Ladder. The thrilling, powerful way I opened the door was none other than my own determination to try doing my life over again. And then within seconds, determination took a hard counter to the face. A blackboard eraser fell on me. Plus, there was a huge rock inside. It was a really painful trap someone had set up. Oh, come on, Satoko. That was already beating me right from the first day I transferred? That frightened me. I was bewildered. The class was surprised too. I wasn't just surprised that the students in the class were all in different grades and were different genders. It was because the room felt completely different from the schools I knew. And as I spent more time with them, my surprise continued to grow. This fresh sense of surprise had never left my life, even to this day. Every day was fresh new surprise. I've never had a single boring day since coming here. These days, or the days, were lively spent with other club members. We played Old Maid with cards with scratches on the back to cheat. Yeah, we did it in chapter 1, right? We let all our passions go wild during our games. Toy Store, we also did this in chapter 2. Recently during those times, there was the bento competition. Yeah, the bento one. In this chapter. It was then that's when I saw an unexpected side of Satoko. Thinking back on it, I only ate dinner with her 2 nights. It was such a gentle time spent, and it warmed my heart remembering it even now. I realized that Satoko was pretending to be stubborn and firm, and how brave she was. Part of her heart always waiting for her Nini to come home. And I vowed to become her Nini. Satoko may have been nagging overly critical, but she knew how to take care of someone. But though it might have seemed like she was taking the lead, it was actually her way of depending upon another person. Even if Satoshi and Satoko's lives as siblings were confined by their uncle and his wife, there were still warm, sunny days. When did those sunny days all go wrong? What mistake was made? Lamenting tragedies of the past would do no good, and I told myself that so many times, but I did it anyway. Keiichi, isn't that why you chose your own path to take back that life? Nobody ordered you to do this. You decided on your own. You don't desire anyone's praise for this. You thought it all through yourself. You'll carve it out yourself, and you'll do it now. This wasn't a path I could see very far down, not like the road parents or society could offer. It was a narrow path, dark and utterly distressing, one for which the next step would always be shrouded in darkness. But the disheartening path would keep on going forever. It was an unlimited path, and there was nowhere I couldn't travel. The kind of path only available to those able to imagine where they wanted to go. Don't be ashamed at breaking from the brightly lit paved road. In fact, feel proud that you found your very own path to walk. And I hadn't discarded that paved road either. Once I achieved my goal, I would go back to the bright road, and then I'd spend those average sunny days at my leisure. Rush. When I next realized it, the hole had grown so deep I couldn't believe it. Did I dig all of this by myself?
これだけ掘れば十分じゃないか。
I put my shovel into the bottom of the hole. I would drag the body here, throw it into the hole, and cover it up with dirt. Even if it took me time to camouflage it by putting plants on top, it would all go much more easily than digging this hole had. I glanced at my watch. It was almost evening and I hadn't realized it. I may not have felt the time passing, but digging a hole this deep must have taken quite a lot of time. I took a seat on the slanted rock nearby and wiped the sweat from my brow. Now, once it got a little darker, I'd go get the metal bat I hid in the schoolyard. What, the bat is still there though? Didn't make the call to lure him out. I was gonna call him first, I forgot. And then I'd do it. The number of things I needed to do to reach that moment were dwindling. I felt that moment closing in on me much more keenly than I did the passage of time. I didn't have any hesitation, but I still felt that a contradiction. At every step in this process, I had a few chances to hesitate, to turn back, to let myself lose my nerve. Having to endure those million temptations and wait for when the time was right was indescribably slow and painful torture. I had thought myself acting all weak because of that, but I stopped midway through. This was okay. It was fine. I could detest the abnormal act of homicide as much as I wanted, and it didn't matter. I wasn't going to be a cutthroat killer after today. I would pass through this strange day and go back to the world I was in before. If I felt to the level of a psychopath to tell them nothing of killing, I wouldn't be able to go back to my old life. So this was fine with me. I didn't have to feel ashamed that hesitating to kill, because I was a human. It was so funny to me that I'd be the bearer of Oyashiro-sama's curse. At the same time, I was aware I was human. I exhaled lightly instead. I concealed my presence and sharpened my senses in all directions to search for anyone around but me. Okay? Let's go. One step at a time. I would walk my own path. A path no one had forced me to walk.
行くぞ。
Ikuzo, let's do this.
前原圭一。
The cicadas made an annoying fuzz. Their cars covered up the suspicious noise of me breaking twigs underfoot, and their cars filled the path far ahead of me, letting me know I would be alone for some time. The cicadas blessed the path I walked, encouraging me with every last ounce of strength they had. The sky was far above. In not even an hour, the veil of night would draw near, and the sky would be tainted with dusk. By the time that the Higurashi would let me hear the chorus in place of the cicadas, when that happened, would everything be over with? Would everything have ended? I said something along those lines and left Satago's fate up to the public agency. But this time was different. I would do it. I would carry it out. I would end it. Jesus, what is this? It would end all very, very soon. Yes, when the Higurashi cried. Okay, I'm not clicking anything, right? It's automatically moving on its own, by the way. Okay, that was a very, very long monologue, I guess, before he does his crime. But it was nice seeing that, or seeing Keiichi's backstory a little bit there, right? Him going to school, him being very bright, that was nice to see. There was nobody at school. I couldn't hear the playful voice of children. This was the first time I'd seen the school with such a lack of human presence. Still, I quieted my breath and looked around, not wanting to be unprepared. It had gotten darker outside, but it was almost like my eyes could see more clearer now. I made absolutely sure of my safety, then walked to the heavy construction machine I'd hidden the metal bat behind. I had a tinge of worry, a premonition that someone had found the bat and hidden it somewhere else as a prank. If that happened, would I take that as opportunity to desist? If it really wasn't there, then the sensation of chilled metal, it was still there where I left it. It hadn't run away. Satoshi hadn't run away. He'd waited here patiently for me, so he named the bat Satoshi now. Okay.
待たせたな、サトシ。いよいよだが、覚悟はいいか。
Through the metallic touch, Satoshi grins at me in my mind. That's what I should be asking you, you know? I did this last year already. You should be more worried about yourself.
上等だぜ、サトシ。
Oh, okay. He's saying that the bat used for the aunt last year, right? And now it's for the uncle.
目に物を見せてやろうぜ。
Was that Satoshi's bat though? Is it the same one he used on the aunt? I guess. No, maybe not, right? Because yeah, that's a evidence. Maybe he threw it away and this is a different bat. I don't know, man. And fit into my hands like it was being absorbed. It didn't feel wrong to swing this. I could move it around so naturally, it was like an extension of my own right arm. Of course it felt like that. Satoshi and I were holding one bat together. Next, I would make the call to lure the man out. It wasn't a bad time for it. My friends were doubtlessly parading happily through the stalls. I hadn't considered where to make the call from. My house and Satako's were pretty far apart. If I called from my house, I wouldn't make it. Couldn't I use a school phone? But as I thought, the room was locked up and I couldn't get in. I'm so naive. You should have at least figured this part out. I couldn't call him, and just for that, was the day all over? I'm sorry, Satoshi. And just as I cursed my own naivete, a miracle occurred. A bicycle came into my schoolyard. Ooh. It was a familiar middle-aged man. Oh, it's bicycle, so it's gonna be Tomitake-kun, the one from the Forest Service field office. Oh, what? I thought it was Tomitake because he had the bike last time, right? Why, wasn't today Sunday? Was he here to pick up something he forgot? Okay, so it's a different person. I thought it was Tomitake. I was like, oh, he's Tomitake here. Anyway, the forest officer went around the back and felt around in his pocket, then unlocked the door and entered. The best possible coincidence, and it had to be Satoshi who saved me. The metal bat, through just my contact with it, told me that this was a chance I couldn't allow to slip by. The sections for the forest office and the school were neatly separated. I felt the man head into the forest office storehouse, which was so far into the back of the students weren't allowed into. The door didn't match his fittings well, so it didn't close all the way, and the gap in the door opened slowly as if to lure me in. I took a deep breath and went in. I tiptoed along silently and stealthily and made it into the teacher's lounge. That was the only place with a phone. Dude, are you serious? Like, look at this. There's still curry there. They didn't even remove it. As I held my breath in the teacher's lounge, I heard the Forest Service officers walking back over. Then the back door cluttered shut and that was locked. I glanced out of the window at the schoolyard and watched as the man got on his bike like nothing had happened and then rode out the school gate. The school once again emptied, becoming deathly silent. I waited for a bit to make sure the silence was the real deal and then reached for the telephone on the principal's desk. I fished Satako's house phone number out of my pocket. Yes, the number in the class directory of Satako had been one from their house, now where she lived with her uncle. I touched the dial with my fingers, then thought for a moment about what to say exactly when he picked up. Despite how many times I'd gone over it in my head last night, now that I had my finger in the dial like this, it started to seep out of my mind like a cracked bucket leaking water. Simple would be best. More importantly, to say it straight and not sound suspicious. I counted 3 heartbeats and then spun the dial. The call sound. Would Satako's uncle pick it up? Now, of all times, the hope that he wouldn't pick it up and the feeling of doom in the knowledge that I couldn't save Satako if he didn't whirled around in vortex. It was the voice of a grumpy man, like he had just woken up. He picked up. Say your name so I know you're Hojo, you asshole. It would be terrible if I got it wrong. I made my mind. I had all the initiative on my side. Here we go.
こちらは下根市沖宮警察です。北条さんのお宅ですか?
I was changing my voice, but did you really think I sounded like an adult? Would you believe I was the cops?
はい。北条ですけど。
今、お宅のお嬢さんの北条聡子さんをこちらで保護しています。
え？聡子が？あいつ何かやらかしおりましたか?
He fell for it. I could tell by how tense he was that he didn't doubt my words. I mean, yeah, a cop calling you, right? And for him, I guess he's not thinking that much anymore. It's like, oh yes, yes sir, yes sir.
詳しい事情はこちらにいらしてからご説明します。すぐにこちらへ来ていただくことはできますか?
今ですか? 風呂に入っちゃったからあんまし表に出たかないんですがね。
What? You don't want to come because you already took a bath?
はい、今すぐです。
すぐ。ぜったく。貞子のやつ、何をしちゃったんですか?
詳しい話はこちらでいたします。では、お待ちしていますので、よろしくお願いします。
あ。ああ。ちょっと。俺、警察署はどこかわかんないんだけど。どこよ、場所。
You moron, what the hell? That couldn't be a police station? I don't know where it is either. Is this checkmate for Keiichi now? Aren't you from around here? Why don't you know that? A greasy sweat came over my body. Eventually, just as I was about to choke, he spoke.
消防署の隣でしたっけ? 遠いな.
Thank goodness you remembered on his own for me. I didn't care where the police station was, so long as he left his house to get there.
では、お待ちしていますので。
俺、警察行ったら誰んとこ訪ねればいいんよ。あんた名前は?
On top of that, he wanted to know my name. Just leave your goddamn house already.
前橋と申します。
Maebashi.
では、 失礼します。
That was close. I almost thoughtlessly told him my real name. I managed to change the last syllable of it, but I put the receiver down like I was running away. My fingers were trembling and I was soaked in with tepid sweat. I wasn't just nervous about the phone call. With that call, everything had finally been put into motion. I left the school, but it was locked before, but it was easy enough to open from the inside. But I couldn't lock it again after I left. In terms of being thorough, I wanted to lock it, but I couldn't waste time going back to the teacher's lounge and looking for the key. I need to rush back as fast as I could and ambush him. I zoomed back to the scene on my bike. If Satoko's uncle got out of town before I got there, everything would be over. He learned there was no one at the station named Maibashi and things would get pretty messed up. Why did he say Maibashi? There's a lot of names he can use, right? Let's say Maibashi. As I returned at full speed, I passed a family wearing yukatas. They must have been on their way to the festival. Many people in Hinamizawa knew my face, though I didn't know theirs. Even just passing by them like this made me uneasy. But I didn't generally come around here, so those living in the area might not have known much about me. That didn't matter right now. I needed to get back as fast as possible to control my breathing and to ambush the man. I hid my bike in a thicket and picked up Satoshi's bat, which I just left hidden in the shade. And then I held my breath, waiting to see someone. I wondered if he still hadn't gotten here. Or maybe he went right out the phone call and passed by here already. I couldn't figure which it was and was set upon by an indescribable impatience. Calm down, Keiichi Maibara. Even if he came here already, he'd pass by here on the way back, right? The end result would be the same. It wouldn't change the fact that he'd die. He'd probably be coming on his motorcycle. How would I stop him then? I figured it would be best not to think too hard and just hit him as he passed. Or beat him out of his seat. How could you even hit him in the motorcycle? The path was made of pebbles. If I hit him as hard as I could and made him lose his balance, he wouldn't be able to help falling. And then, the chorus of the Higurashi stopped. The sound of the bike approached from far away. I couldn't tell what sort of motorcycle it was from its sound, but I'd seen it parked before, so I'd know. It was getting rapidly closer. It was almost there, or here. If he just went a little farther, he'd cross into the thicket and then appear in front of me. I'd take a moment to make sure it was him, and then when I had, I'd put my plan into action. The motorcycle appeared. Okay, here we go. Moment of truth. Is he gonna do it? A few easily identifiable characteristics told me it was Sadako's uncle's bike without a doubt. Was it really him? Was it really Sadako's uncle? I wasn't making a mistake, was I? I looked at its characteristics again. Its color, shape, and most of all, the man's clothes and the face. Those last feelings of hesitation, I did away with them. Sadako, and now your nini will end it, okay? Closer, closer. The bike came closer. Let's go, Satoshi. Well, he answered. There's the first time we heard his voice, I suppose, right? Whoosh. I jumped out of the thicket. I used my shoulder to basically tackle the uncle on the bike with all my might. He gave a dumb shout as his bike completely lost its balance. Finally, it fell, the bike scattering clouds of sand, and after spinning, it stopped. Her uncle tossed to the ground, didn't understand what had just happened, and groaned for a few moments, crouched on the ground. My breathing started to become ragged. Because yeah, you're panicking here. No, I couldn't have this emotion. Some weird secretion crossed through my brain and nearly made me hallucinate. Her uncle was groaning, Now was the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. What was I doing? All the sounds in the world cut off. My mental chaos from a moment ago withdrew like a lie, and I could feel the temperature in my head rapidly cooling down. The tension in my muscles all went away, like the strings they had been attached to had been cut, and I let my hands dangle at my sides. It wasn't quite like exhaustion. Have you calmed down now? Keiichi, my Bara? Do you need to remember again why things got to this point today? Scrape. Scrape. I stepped over the pebble path, taking one step after another step, then another towards Satoko's uncle. The more I walked, the more my breathing calmed. The more I walked, the more I felt my body cooling, calming, chilling, and frost. Yes, at this moment, this guy had lost permission to live. I had just rescinded it. So he mustn't stay in this world any longer. If he lived any longer, if Satoko's misfortune continued, it would be my responsibility for having allowed him to live. I could feel the cooling substance going through my whole body, even down my capillaries. Her uncle was at my feet now, still on the ground like an idiot. I smiled coldly at how ridiculous he looked. That's all it took for it to hurt. Satoko's hurt much more, and now you're gonna feel that. And with your life, I'll make up for her pain, yeah. I erased all unnecessary information from my mind. I prioritized the murder of this man. Execute, execute, and execute. Jesus. We're getting this music again. I delivered my first strike to the back of his head. I wanted to get at the most effective spot, at least during the first moment. I'd have to attack him while he was at his most defenseless. And if it was hit in the head, he'd cover his head. It was a defensive reaction all humans make, like machines. He used both hands to cover his head, so he couldn't pick himself up off the heap he was on the ground. Like pounding a caterpillar into the dirt, I hit him over and over. If he covered his head, I'd hit him in the side. If he covered his body, I'd go for his head. If he rolled over, I'd strike his feet, his knees, his elbows. I didn't care where anymore. By just delivering one blow after another, I induced panic in him. I retained my overwhelming advantage, but I hadn't done nearly enough to deliver a fatal wound. Her uncle skillfully pulled himself up off the ground and started to run like a fleeing rabbit. It wasn't a judgment he'd made after seeing my face and deciding whether to fight me. Right now, he was fleeing by instinct, just trying to escape from the threat that he presented itself. A counterattack from the more physically capable uncle was what I was most concerned about. He may have run, but it wasn't all that unlucky. And the odds were in my favor. Was it Hunger Games? The uncle didn't run away towards people but off the path into the woods. How unpleasant that he would run into the direction where nobody else was. He was fleeing into strange geography like a rat that instinctively runs into tight spots over and over. Yes, he was no longer human. He was a rat. The blood vessels in my legs expanded and my total oxygen supply increased. I lowered myself to gain the most explosive velocity I could. Without breathing, I became a wind-like shadow and dashed. I crossed the thickets, crushed dead tree branches underfoot, and dove through the woods like a bullet. He ran so cowardly, arms flailing as he went. After catching up to him, I didn't need so much as a blink of an eye to strike him again. My senses and mind and body were all sharpened purely to kill this man. That was the first time I'd felt like this. Well, this was the first experience I'd ever had killing someone. It felt natural continuing to do this for the first time. And that meant I had this much talent for killing. Or perhaps the act of killing was so simple that anyone could do it. I didn't struggle or grow tired at all chasing the clumsily fleeing uncle. No matter how much he ran, it was like trying to get away from his own shadow, He couldn't get away from me. I could easily aim at his back, his shoulders, and his head even from this unnatural stance. Each time I struck him, he wailed in pain and begged pitifully for forgiveness, but it didn't disturb my mind. I was neither excited nor plagued by hesitation like before. I felt sharp, I felt like a carnivore. Of course, so did the uncle who was trying to run away because he didn't want to die. He didn't want to be eaten like a herbivore, running with all its might trying to get away. Despite all the attacks, despite all the hits, he kept on fleeing without even staggering. And despite the bad footing in the forest, he impressively never tripped or anything. But there was no need to admire that fact. It was simply proof that he was no more than an animal. If he was chased, he would run. If he was going to be killed, he would run. He bared his fangs at the weak, but couldn't oppose the strong whatsoever. He was lowly, vulgar, a diminutive animal. He harmed Satsuko. Scar after scar to her body and mind, deep wounds that might not ever go away as long as she lived. My cold and calm emotions suddenly turned into bestial ones. My personality changed into something specialized for murder purely to devour the diminutive animal before me. The uncle gave a puny little shriek, covered his head, and ran and ran and ran. I'm impressed by how much you can run. Fine, run as much as you like. I will be your death. I'll choose the moment at my leisure. Your legs will hurt, your lungs will feel about to burst, your head will hurt from lack of oxygen. If you feel the pain has become worse than death, then by all means, stop anytime. Without turning back, suffocating on the stare of the approaching death, he just ran shamefully onward. He ran but was chased, his head bashed with a metal bat, sweat and drool flying everywhere, blood clinging to him. From his mouth came the sounds of coarse, irregular breathing and high-pitched screaming that verged on crying. And pleas for forgiveness of someone I didn't know who. Each and every second was a second of atonement that I granted him. Now run, then fall and moan and die. Where did you even crawl out of anyway? You were never here before. If you were never here, you never should have showed up. If you never showed up, our lives would still be fun and enjoyable. We would have gone to Day's festival, waited for each other, and gone to the shrine laughing. We would have been playing amongst the stalls right about now. We'd be browsing the strange food stalls, yelling at talk festivals, trying to get prizes from goldfish scooping, ring throwing, or target practice. Mion would surely make it into a competition, and we as a club would have a grand time. And everyone would have been cheering for Rika-chan's dedication dance, and everyone would say how fun it was, and it would give us energy for days to come. Fun, enjoyable, and funny, warm time spent with friends. And that would have happened, but it didn't, and now it was all smashed to pieces. There was no doubt that would be what the world was like if you never showed up. You were the obstacle, the mistake, the heresy in that world. But I would correct that mistake now. I would erase you and make it so this last week never happened. Tonight was the Watanagashi festival. The holy night where taking just one life was permitted in the name of Oyashiro-sama's curse. And it looked like the Higurashi stopped crying at some point. When the Higurashi cried, everything would end. And the Higurashi silenced. Lowly one, the hour of atonement is at an end. The Higurashi have stopped their crying, thus it is the end. The end, the end, and the end. You don't have to run away anymore. Die with those dirty brains of yours smashed everywhere. Oh my god. Lightning and thunder struck like an explosion. It was so loud, it shook the ground and I smelled gunpowder. The response I got this time was clearly different from the one before. The metal bat crunched into the crown of his head. It was like the top of his head had caved in and the bat felt like it was biting him. It had been the final killing attack that visited him when I didn't overlook the opening that he left as his knees gave out under him. I remained alert for a few moments, then thud thud thud. He planted both knees in the ground and then fell forwards, burying his head in the ground. I've been holding back my ragged breathing, but now it all came out of me like a dam bursting. My head was dizzy and light, and unable to maintain my balance, I leaned against a nearby tree. The uncle didn't try and guard his head any longer. After a disgusting sort of spasm, he stopped moving. He's spasming because he's dead. Did I get him? Did I get him for sure? I fought back my exhausted urge to fall over where I stood and drew towards him. Bat still ready. Bat still at the ready. It was possible he was faking it and trying to wait it out. Should I check for more of a pulse? I realized right away though how unnecessary that would be. If I thought he might be faking it, then I would just have to keep pummeling him until I was satisfied. I fought back my ragged breathing again. And then I swung my bat far above and brought it down. Clunk. His body leapt like a bow, but he didn't try and cover his head. And then once again, I aimed for his head and swung. His reaction was the same this time. After spending a few moments making his head into mochi, the hits gradually started to feel different, and it started to spray a filthy dark red liquid everywhere. That was enough. It was definite now. I had absolutely killed him. There was no sense of accomplishment nor one of regret. I didn't feel anger towards Satako's uncle nor pity towards Satako herself. Instead, right now, I was feeling like my heart had been stolen by the downpour it had begun to rain at some point, and how uncomfortable it felt. The rainwater drenched my body and dripped down to the ground. The excitement within me faded as the rain washed away the grime. In exchange, my shoes were so wet they made splashing sounds. And despite abusing Satoshi's bat like that, it wasn't bent very much. There were a few dents in it, probably from hitting the man, but nothing that would make it seem different from before. Instead, it had been stained with black, with red, with mud and blood. But that itself would be evidence. The one piece of evidence needed to prove that my delusions hadn't just been daydreams and that it ended up Satako's uncle for eternity. Alright, Keiichi. Calm your mind. The time for passion is over. Now is the time to be cold as ice. I needed to bury the body, but where was I? I simply followed the man as far as he ran into the darkness. I couldn't take a guess as how far he would run. It was already pitch black around us, and the only light I had to go on was the very faint lights on the road a little further down. It was so dark out. I hadn't noticed the darkness until just now. My vision was so good, I could see the man's ugly hairline. It was only now that I realized how much crazy strength I had mustered at that moment. I went over to the street light. Okay. Let's take a break here, man. That was very intense. That was a lot of reading there. But yeah. He did it. Keiichi, he went through with it. He actually did it, right? Insane. Like, damn. But it was also nice, like earlier, right? We had some insights on Keiichi, I suppose. Before he was in Hinamizawa, right? That cram school thingy. That he was bright. He was smart, I mean. That was nice though. But I wish they could have expanded it. I wanted to know more of Keiichi's backstory. That would have been much more better. But yeah, we only had a little bit. But it was already good. And then Keiichi did this, his plan. He killed Satoko's uncle. And yeah, now he's gonna bury him. But we will see that in the next episode. So I wonder what's gonna happen next though. He's gonna be for sure very paranoid now, right? Because yeah, he killed someone, right? What is he gonna do? Return back to normal? He couldn't sleep last time, right? Remember when they told him about Oyashiro-sama? He couldn't sleep. Imagine doing this. He will never sleep again. But yes, we will have to find out what happens to him in the next one as we do more of Higurashi When They Cry Chapter 3 Tatarigoroshi. So I'll see you then, guys. Bye bye.